Hi, Mandy. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Donna. Thanks for having me today on this podcast. I'm very excited.
Delighted to share you with everybody. This is a fantastic, exciting topic to talk about. Toddlers, wrangling
Yes.
toddlers, and all that we can do. We've talked before, which was really exciting on my Instagram, and why I wanted to share you with everybody in regards to my parenting when I was parenting toddlers and having the different ages, different girls with different personalities. Wish that I knew the things that you're teaching parents about, how to be able to, it's not discipline. I don't, discipline sounds so strong, doesn't it? But have those boundaries and foundations that they can still feel like parents are in control, but not by the time out and the in the room or the smacking, which I know no one smacks anymore, do they? But all of that, I wish that I had knew that, because in my gut feeling back then, I probably knew there was another way. We just didn't know. And the other thing about it is the mentality of, oh, you're too soft. If you're too soft
Abs-
on them, then they're just going to walk all over you. So, there's that. I know there's parenting titles on that in regards to being too soft, but also the way that you're able to support the toddlers to be able to behave in the way we might like. So please explain that. Please explain your
Yeah.
method behind it all.
Yeah, sure. So toddlerhood is a very interesting time, and I do think, especially when you go through it for the very first time, it can become as quite a shock, because you've had this tiny little baby who, babyhood may have gone well, it may not have. As in, you still might have been finding your feet as a parent, because obviously first time parenting or even second, third, as you say, with temperaments, can throw curveballs, right?
Yep.
So, but toddlerhood in particular can become a shock because your little baby, looks still just as small as they were, but internally there's this new will that's emerging. There's this new, um, me do it by my own self. Mum has an agenda or a thought in mind, or dad, or but the toddler has their own thoughts in their mind, and it can start to feel really like you've got this other little person now
Mm.
who has their own ideas and agenda. And so it really is sort of, I guess, the very beginning of that sort of way of how are we going to collaborate, or how are we going to get cooperation so that our lives can still go on without chaos.
The tantrums, that's the biggest thing, in being able to keep calm with the
Well,
tantrums.
that's exactly right. And I think because there's just so much going on for their development, so not only is their will emerging, their brain is, very different to what we would sort of expect of, say, the adult brain. They're still very underdeveloped in their logical and reasoning brain. They've got all these emotions flooding their system now, and they are learning about emotions, but they still don't necessarily have these regulation pathways where they can just calm themselves down. They need someone to co-regulate with them. So I guess the thing that I love doing with parents is talking about what is going on for your toddler. Why are they doing that? Why are they screaming? Why are they throwing their head back? So that you can understand why they're doing that, and then what is your role in that. Are you meant to stop all the feelings? Are you meant to, is that naughty? Is that not naughty? And so once you get a bit of a grounding of where does my toddler sit, and where do I sit in that, it actually can just cause you to have a lot less sort of sense of frustration and chaos, because you have a clearer idea of what's actually normal for your toddler to be doing, and then what I give you the confidence of knowing, okay, when they do that, what they actually need from you is this. And so I guess my work that I do with parents is to try to decode toddlers for you.
Can we do
And
that? Can you
yes,
do
we
that?
can.
Okay,
We
awesome.
can. So we can decode some of their behaviors, so we can understand what they're doing, and not only just decode it and, like you say, manage behaviors so that life goes smoother for us, but really in some of our responses, we're building so many wonderful things for their future. So we're building pathways of regulation in our responses. So it's not just about controlling and surviving the toddler phase. My passion is to actually equip you to make your role very meaningful through that phase, and also you're benefiting their future. Because for me, toddlerhood, the reason I love, and after all the developmental research and different areas I've worked in, the reason I came back to toddlers is because I really do see that knock-on effect, that the parent-child relationship, really that collaboration and that feedback loop, I guess, is what we talk about, where the parent has a role and the toddler has a role. That's usually the pattern you set in toddlerhood carries on through to middle childhood. And so if you decide, okay, well, the way, like you talked about labels for these types of parenting. So, in research, they talk about, say, permissive parenting or
Yes.
authoritarian or
So
authoritative.
can
You'll
you
hear all
explain
these
that a little bit
labels.
too? Yeah, because
Yeah.
we understand authoritarian, which is, do as I say kind of thing, which is, sadly, probably a little bit where I was at. I'm a very soft, caring person, but, back then, it was like they had to do what you say. So there's got that, but explain the permissive a little bit, because that's the one I was talking about where it's probably not great either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I just know that in hindsight, we all will look back and go, "Oh, I wish I knew something." But we all do the best with what we know. And I think authoritarian, yeah, different generations obviously get exposed to different research and things that come out. But authoritarian, certainly in generations gone by, has been seen as the way that of course parents need to lead, so that it's seen as leadership looks like.
Yes.
We call the shots and you just deal with it,
Yes.
and you get what you get and you don't get upset. That sort of style.
Mm.
But then there's the permissive style, and sadly, a lot of the sort of the respectful parenting or gentle parenting labels get sort of thrown, that people think that it's permissive. But if you truly look into the proper research, and if it's been if this sort of ways have been shared with people with research in mind, that true respectful parenting is actually more the authoritative approach, which is the middle ground, which is not quite permissive. Permissive comes across as, I guess, we want to keep the peace, we want to keep everyone happy, we want to just not rock the boat, so we sort of
no boundaries.
Move boundaries, or even if we do set a boundary and there's an upset, we think, oh, I'm sure there's a way around this, and we, and children actually feel very insecure in that style of like being led. I think if they're the ones who then call all the shots, they actually don't want that. Even toddlers, although they may seem like they want to be in control of everything and lead the household, they actually don't. They're looking for security, and in toddlerhood, they're actually pushing boundaries to find edges. So they push essentially doors that they don't want you to let them open. If you metaphorically sort of think about that. And so, the middle ground is what we're looking for. So the middle ground, really, I like to sort of explain it as, I guess, being, yes, your child's confident leader. So yes, parents, I do believe we are wiser, we've lived a bit longer, we can see when an oven's going to burn a hand, so of course we need to step in. And I find in those sorts of boundaries, we find that we're confident because we know, oh, there's danger. But it's in the other little things like, oh, well, I guess I'd rather keep them happy and let them draw on the wall, or whatever it is. I think you just need to be deciding. I say to parents often, you are the decision makers in your home. You're the ones who decide, I'm not okay with that. And then you lead your child to do so. But instead of having to threaten them and say, if you draw on the wall, you're not having dessert later, which is a very mismatched sort of consequence for the child. It's actually being their guide, going up to them and saying, can you draw on the paper? You're wanting to give them an opportunity to do what you can. So you want to redirect, can you draw on the paper? And if they're in a testing mode, they'll look at you, smirk, and keep drawing on the wall.
Right, then what do you...
And that's where your next, and this is why I talk about the sort of leveled intervention, where we then go, oh, it looks like you're having a hard time. I'm going to help you stop, and we're going to pop these up. So you're having a logical consequence where you go, this is not going to work. I'm not going to keep persevering and keep telling you, stop drawing on the wall, until I get furious. Yeah. We actually want to take action and say, I'm going to help you stop now. I'm going to, and they don't have to be in trouble, but this is how they learn. They test the boundary. They check if you got, even the turn back and smirk for a toddler is then checking in. They're wanting you to reaffirm the boundary, and often toddlers need action. They need you to be the boundary for them because they're impulsive, and that's that part of the brain I was talking about before. That is, it's underdeveloped. Often there's certain sort of toddlers as well that are real researchers, should I say, and they're the ones who tend to be more testing and need to test boundaries hundreds of times, whereas there's other toddlers who might only test boundaries a handful of times and then sort of know. And that temperament comes out in that as well. And once they've asked for a reaffirmation of the boundary, even if they then need to cry about it and be upset, and this is where the emotion side comes in, then we validate. So it's a difference between authoritarian might have been, that's enough,
stop it,
stop your nonsense, is actually, you know what, it's hard, I'm not going to let you do that, and you're sad, and it's okay to be sad, but it's not okay to draw on the wall. So it's limiting behaviors, but welcoming emotions and helping them then know what it's like to process emotions and move through difficult emotions with your support. And this is where I think that's why it's so important to keep boundaries when you allow emotion, because say they start to lose it over that situation and you just want to keep them happy, which is not exactly what healthy, resilient toddlers to grow into children need. They need opportunities to feel sad and know how to deal with those feelings with the loving support of their parent. It's really tempting for us to just go, oh, well, we'll try one more time. Let's try the crayons one more time just to keep the peace. But that's actually going to make the job harder next time. So I guess it's like the framework I'm trying to bring to parents is to give you an idea of what your role is, what's going to actually reduce tantrums over time and the intensity of tantrums, what's going to help bring security to your toddler. And when toddlers feel led, they can actually settle and they don't tend to test as much.
Right.
So it's sort of like the holy grail. If you can try find a pattern and they can predict it, it actually can make toddlerhood much more enjoyable.
Because they are.
That's what we want.
Oh, I know. And I, like I would have said to you last time, working with toddlers as a sleep specialist, I love them. They are so funny. But when I was parenting toddlers, I did not think it was funny at times, when they're pushing those boundaries. And, it is, you just want to be able to enjoy the best you can and not be so upset by it or be triggered, because I used to get quite triggered if it was going on and on and on.
Yeah.
So getting back to the different temperaments, I always talk about this. I don't name children, but they'll know who they are. I've got, one that would have easily quite, I ask her to do that, probably be not really having that big a tantrum, probably would have drawn on the paper. I've got another one who would not have, right? So let's talk about the ones that are more challenging, you love them as much. So say, for example, you've got a toddler who has more of a voice about it. So we go through all of those things that you've said. Then they just won't settle. So, I mean, tantrum on the floor. I mean, some toddlers bump their heads deliberately. Can we talk a little bit more about the ones that are a little bit more challenging? Like, what would you do in that situation when it just doesn't come down?
It's so tricky. And look, it's so important for people listening to know that there are genuinely a range in temperaments, and sort of the way humans, like just the way we're wired, the way we receive sensory feedback from the environment, and then the way it enters our system and what we do with that. And so, yes, certainly why I feel like I've even ended up in this particular field. Obviously, I was a teacher in the past and I did my master's in child development, but it was actually when I had my own toddler that was the deep feeling toddler, that was from 0 to 100 in a second and 3 hours to go from 100 back to 0. And it is taxing. So very practically, I do believe parents parenting these types of toddlers, you do need your village, you need a support network, you need time away from them, you need other caregivers, you just need to, so that you've actually got the your own sort of cup to be able to cope, because it isn't easy, and they don't tend to push you to the edge a bit quicker. But these sorts of toddlers, often they sort of deeply feeling, they take whatever that sort of feeling is, and it actually does just go into their system so differently. So they're not actually trying to be it's sort of, I guess, really seeing them that they're not trying to actually be more difficult. They actually just genuinely receive that feedback much different. And usually as babies, you notice this anyways. When you reflect back, you're like, oh, they were sort of maybe the intense baby who needed more contact and things like that. And often the funny thing about these intense toddlers is they seem to want to push you away more, but they actually need you more, which is the really tricky thing, right?
Yes.
Because also some of their behaviors and emotions actually make you want to back off, but they often are the ones who need to feel that you're there and that you're empathizing. Empathy is a huge key for these little ones, because what we want to do is, all right, yep, that's enough, you're good, you're okay, you're fine, all that stuff. But what they actually need is to help you, to help them process what's going on in their body, and often little ones, like you say, very young toddlers, they're not going to hear empathy, they're going to feel empathy. It's totally different. So they might not hear you saying, you wish you could have kept drawing, but they'll feel whether you're coming across as, okay, that's enough, shut up, darling, in your head, or whether you're actually like, this is hard for you, and it is genuinely hard, and I'm going to be here as your anchor, even if I have to take myself away and take a few deep breaths, I'm going to ride this out with you. And I think these children actually need much more opportunities to practice their regulation, which is with you often. And so it's definitely not an easy gig.
No.
Like you say, with these big feelings that start to come up, there's quite a few practical steps, and I share a lot of this sort of stuff in the membership, which I'll tell you all about, which is so great. And the reason I started that is because it's such a, like me and you started talking last time, Donna, we could have talked all day. And it's one of these things where it's so busy shifting the way you might have been brought up, it's shifting some perspectives you have of your child, that I really felt like a membership's the way to go, because I can immerse week in, week out. I'm immersing parents in, they might say, this scenario happened, talk to us about that. And then I try to talk to you about your actual scenarios. We've got a Facebook group. I've got videos in a members only area and articles about everything under the sun that you're going to have happen in toddlerhood. But yeah, these kids sometimes who have the big feelings actually need a few steps for you to take to help them contain those emotions, as in not contain them, as in push them down, but help them to bring them in so that they can ride that wave and come back to sort of, neutral zone. So sometimes these children do need you to actually take a few extra steps, and these steps I talk about in the membership help them to then learn how they can then start to help their own intensity, because these kids are going to live with that intensity for years to come. And sometimes they do get to older age groups and they have these big feelings and they don't yet have the skills to know, what do I do? And then, it affects their relationships and that going forward as well. So,
and I have, again, no naming names. And I said this to you before, the child that has that is a beautiful, kind-hearted, gorgeous kid. But with me, because I dealt with it differently as toddler, again, I did the best at that time and I'm trying to change it. It's that really hard to regulate. It's like a toddler, as teenagers, and it's all life and we're figuring it out. But it's so interesting for me to have that conversation with you, because I think if people are empowered with this knowledge that you can give, you're doing knowledge is power.
Absolutely,
and help the parenting journey not be so challenging.
Yeah, and isn't it funny how you say the teenage and the toddler, they actually do say in developmental research, when you look at them, they actually mirror each other. So a lot of the time, that's why you hear someone say three-nager, because a lot of the same resistance and need to push you away for their own independence comes in teenage years. And this is why I feel like this style of parenting can be really empowering to the parent-child relationship in the long run, because you're still giving these boundaries. They can still feel angry and hate the decision you've made, and may even say things when they're a toddler. They may say, "Mummy, silly mummy," and when they're a teenager, they might say, "I hate you," or whatever it is. But the truth is, because we've got this sort of grounding of, "I don't need you to be my best friend," it's more, you must feel so angry to say you hate me. You're always going to what's going on inside this little person, whether they're a toddler or whether they're a teenager, so that the relationship can stay strong, but the behaviors aren't necessarily accepted. So I personally have found, obviously my daughter, who was the 0 to 100, is still a 0 to 100 child. And yes, there's periods we go through where I think, oh, is this regulation pathway getting better or not? But then there are other times where I go, oh, I can see some skills there. I mean, she's only just leaving preschool into sort of childhood, but still, I feel like I know for sure that going the other way, like lots of people at the time said to us, you need to go harder, you need to give her more consequences, you need to make her feel it more. And all that did ever was seem to push her away and make this gaping hole. And then I felt that she needed to test it again to see where she stood. And these kids are often checking in, where do they stand with us? And connection is like a massive thing for them.
It is.
And so it's a real growth area for us as parents. It's really is.
It is constantly. And being in this industry for nearly 5 years, I just, every day, all the people I connect with, I'm just loving it, because it's so important. This parenting role is so important, but so challenging at times, and having the community is amazing. Community, either in your family or people like yourselves, having this amazing membership.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's the work that we are do, and the support we offer to parents, it honestly can make a world of difference, because when you can actually ground yourself with knowing, this is my job when this happens and this is their job. I love that whole idea of parenting isn't just like a Yeah, it's a relationship always, but it's definitely like there are roles that we play and there are roles that our children play. And I'm sure in sleep that's exactly what
Yep.
happens. And often, and actually the PhD that I've been doing heaps and heaps of the research around reflective practice in parenting, but also the way we communicate with our children, whether they're toddlers or teenagers, is all around our narrative. So what we think about our role, what we think about what we expect they should be doing. So if we think the toddler should never scream, then we're going to drive ourselves crazy.
Yeah.
But when we educate ourselves and go, actually, that's a really common way toddlers communicate because of language and their immature brain, then we can actually let go. So our narrative's a huge one in whether we even enjoy the day to day or not.
Yeah.
And then our confidence is another one. That one is a massive one. They actually have found when we are confident, say in a decision or, whatever, whether it be bedtime routine or whatever it is, and we have that confidence, they can settle into that. Whereas if we're like, oh, please go to sleep. I hope you go to sleep. Oh God. Like they actually pick up on that and are like, she's not sure. So I'm not responding, and literally predicts whether they can respond to you or not. So I find those two things your child may never change, and if you change those two things about you, you can enjoy it better, like much more. So I love that sort of approach.
And constantly for me, like I said, I'm always trying to better myself as a parent, as a mum and person, but it is all that, and then now I'm dealing with sleep all the time, particularly with toddlers. Like I said, I love it. The parents are frightened sometimes. They're like, this little person, how's this little person control this situation? But the parents feel guilt. And then, by toddler age, most parents these days are working. So add that on top of the guilt. When we get to nighttime,
we're exhausted.
Exhausted. You feel guilty. This baby or toddler wants you. But again, what we do is, with the sleep support that I provide, is we don't leave them. It's not shutting that door and going, you have to go to sleep because I'm telling you to. It's like setting up these foundations, being confident in the choices, being there for them in a certain way.
Yeah,
so
for
even
sure.
they would go, hold my hand, mum. And I say to the parents, touch them on the back. They ask you.
That's exactly right. We call that freedom and boundaries, where yes, we're wanting to remind, especially in toddler, they're craving some element of autonomy or freedom. So often with toddlers, the minute you go, no, and they'll come back with a stronger no. And it's sort of like we can set up power struggles, or we can facilitate cooperation. And some of those things are when they're requesting or demanding only the hand. It's not even about being like, oh, I'm not going to give you what you want. It's more about going, I feel like you're demanding that, and then you're demanding something else, and then you're demanding something else. What you're actually asking for is a limit so that you can feel safe and secure. And I'm going to be letting you know, Mummy's right here. I'm right here, mate. I'm going to rub your back or whatever it is. And that helps them settle and not be like, oh, I'm in control, calling all the shots, because they don't want to actually be in that role. And I think that's what I mean by decoding them. When they are pushing, they're not pushing to irritate you. They're pushing to seek often security, fighting the edge. And that security comes from, mum and dad being in control, in leadership. So,
and I don't like using behavioural discipline control. That's the old terms, but it's like leadership, being the parent, being the captain of the ship is like, I like, like we don't want the children to be sailing the ship. It's just being the parent and getting the right knowledge with love and support. And it doesn't have to be controlling, but it's like, you are the parent, you're the adult. And that's what I say to people with their toddlers. I'm like, we can do this because we've got the knowledge, but we can do it with making them feel with love and support, because once they have that comfort and security, it's amazing the levels of what they've done with the sleep support, but the parents have just been consistent. Love you, I'm here for you. And then they're like, oh, okay, in a toddler way. But it's just intriguing. So we're sort of running out of time because we've got a busy lives, but please explain your amazing membership in a detail.
For sure.
Because we've been, Taylor and Katie and I, because they've got the toddlers, Katie and Taylor obviously work for me, or with us, in part of the family, and they've got toddlers.
So wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, you're constantly part of our conversations. Well, I'm part of their conversations. So, and particularly Taylor's purchased your membership, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so it's been great actually having. So what I've been doing for years, I have been running this, you can find me on Instagram at Raise Toddlers or on Facebook, and my website is www.raisetoddlers.com.au. And I've often done one-on-one consults with families just around lots of things. I specialize in toileting, toilet learning, which can also be a massive disaster when it comes to toddlers. And so that's one avenue that if you are struggling with, you can get in touch with me about. But often with the toddler consults, it's lots of things like behavior or resistance or just tantrums and just trying to understand things. And so that one-on-one consults are really popular. But what I started to find is I was on the phone with parents and I would get off one call, get onto the next one, and it would be exactly the same scenario almost. And I thought, gosh, I'm repeating myself, but also these parents are all facing similar things. And it actually made me really confident to say, you're not alone. And, because often we sit in our own homes and think, what's wrong with my child? But we don't know that it's actually so commonly going on in everyone's home. So I thought, there's so many topics that I could provide a video on, provide some guidance on, and then also offer the Facebook group where I can then be talking. I do lives every week around whether it be play or, sleep or mostly things like play and toileting and behaviors and all that sort of stuff. And I just found that that's sort of a platform that I can really, really support families in. And I then also offer those members a discount on my one-on-one consults if there's anything more tricky to figure out. But that membership also covers a whole bunch of stuff on play. So we've got an entire play gallery around how to support some independent play for your toddler so that you can also, not be their full-time entertainer and actually see them grow and develop, because that soothes the inside of a toddler's world as well. And a lot of parents do start to feel captive by their toddler, like they can't even pop on a load of washing and things. And I just think that the home can be more peaceful and it doesn't have to be a chaotic nightmare that you survive. It can actually be a really special time where you build some foundations for their future, but also have your time to yourself too and not feel like your time's been, stolen from you type thing. So this membership is definitely my main offering. So definitely check that out. You can see it on the website. But I often just jump on to Instagram and try and share as many topics as I can on IGTV or through lives with you guys. And I really value the other people I've met on Instagram, and it's been great connecting with you as well, Donna.
I know. I love sharing it to everyone. So thank you so much for doing our My Potty. We'll get all that information to everybody, but thanks so much.
No worries. I'll send some links through. Thanks, Donna. Have a great day. Hey.
Bye.
Bye.